Slide shifted. So good afternoon. From today onwards, in this course of Advanced Materials Chemistry, you will be now starting on functional materials, starting a little bit about studying different kinds of materials which has various used for various functions. And in this, I will be covering around 5 lectures, out of which one will be dedicated for heterogeneous catalysis. Heterogeneous, I have named it, but we'll also discuss a little bit about homogeneous catalysis too, the different materials for that and the different purposes and where they are used and what are the properties. So those we'll be covering. And then we'll talk a little bit about energy materials. So we'll talk about energy production, energy storage. So that will be around 3 lectures. And one lecture we will be keeping for magnetic materials. So this is how the distribution of the lectures are going to be for the functional materials part, which I'm going to cover. So today we are starting with materials for heterogeneous catalysis. I'm Dr. Dimple P. Datta, Professor, HBNI, and my email address is given right there on the slide. So in case you have any doubts which you want to clarify, you can always email me and I'll be available to answer the questions.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. So, so now we are moving into this.
Hello, excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, Sanjit, tell me.
Ma'am, there's a slight echo in your voice. Can that be remedied?
I'll just ask the technician. There's an echo.
There's a slight echo in your voice. So the pace
Okay.
that you're talking
I'm
at, some
just
of the
asking
words
the
are
technician.
incomprehensible.
Just be with me.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, is there still an echo?
Just a little bit, not that much as before.
Okay. So do tell me if there is a lot of echo. Then we'll again check from our sides. Okay, so continuing with it, as I said, today's class is going to be on materials for heterogeneous catalysis. And this is how the content I plan to talk about today. So we'll talk a little bit about renewable energy and renewable fuels. Then we'll cover basic principles of catalysis. It will be followed by catalysts for the conversion of biomass-derived feedstocks into fuel component. Then we'll talk a little bit about electrocatalysis for water electrolysis, then electrocatalysis for CO2 reduction, and then photocatalysis for water electrolysis. So these are the few portions which will be covered in heterogeneous catalysis. This is a very broad and huge field. So I've just taken a little bit snippets of each, and I'll try to give you a flavor of each of these different points. So what is renewable energy? When we talk about an overview on renewable energy, so we know renewable energy is energy from sources that are naturally replenishing. But the major problem is, though they are virtually inexhaustible in duration, the problem is the limited in the amount of energy that is available per unit of time. So if we look into this major types of renewable energy sources, we know about wind energy, there is solar energy, there is hydroelectric power, then we have hydrogen, we have geothermal, we have ocean, we have biomass. So biomass is basically the wood and wood waste, or you have municipal solid waste, you have landfill, gas and biogas, ethanol, biodiesel, all which is being derived from this kind of different waste materials, wood and wood waste, municipal solid waste, etc. So these are the major types of renewable energy sources. So why are we so very concerned about renewable energy? Why we want renewable energy? So that obviously all of us are now really aware that for a very long time, what we are doing is we are just adding in carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So it is increased by around 105 parts per million in the last 70 years. So there has been a lot of global warming in the past 200 years. We are seeing acid rains, so there's ocean acidification, which is definitely not affecting our aquatic life in the positive manner. Then we have a rising sea level, almost 3.2 millimeter every year. We are having decreasing ice sheet mass, retreating glaciers, decreasing Arctic ice at the rate of around 13% in each decade. This is not actually looking very good. And all this is happening because we are burning fossil fuels, because with rapid urbanization, more and more technology are coming into the picture. And what is happening, we are using more and more fossil fuels. And with the burning of the fossil fuels, what we see is the greenhouse gas emission. And this is what is actually giving rise to so much amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So this heating effect is increasing. So now renewable energy is crucial for mitigating all these different types of climate change. So whatever we are generating from fossil fuel, we want to have the same from renewable sources because they are less harmful to our atmosphere. So we'll talk a little bit about these different sources, what we have. We have from the wind energy, we are having these wind farms. We are now generating a lot of wind energy. And the amount of power and therefore electricity a wind turbine can produce is largely based on the wind velocity. And the equation is shown over here, as you can see. Power is half rho A V cube. And what is A is the larger the wind turbine, you have more power. That is basically the area which is covered by the wind turbine. And V is the velocity of the wind. So you can see higher wind speed means that is lot more power. So you have an air density, it depends on the air density, which is kind of fixed. And then you have the swept area, the velocity. And so this power, whatever you generate, is measured in watts. So now you have this wind power and this is coming in intermittently, right? So you are not having the same kind of wind flow all through the day. So sometimes wind is flowing, the velocity is very high, sometimes it is low. So there are times in which you have low output and sometimes you have high output. Now, when you have high output, it is not necessary that the grid that time needs that much amount of power. So that means you need to store it. So that kind of storage and all these things, this is also again needed, and for which we again look into different kinds of materials for which we can store this energy. Okay. Then what else we have for renewable energy? We also have solar energy, where thermal solar panels are used to generate heat energy. Then you have photovoltaic cells which are made from silicon and which are turning sunlight directly into electricity. So at present, we have in India almost 25.1% of the total electricity generated is by the solar PV. And if we look into the contribution of renewables into our entire grid, we have around 48.3%. So these are very recent figures. So around 25.1% of total electricity generated by solar PV in India. Then we have geothermal, which is the heat energy from Earth. So decay of radioactive elements and residual heat from planetary formation around 4.5 billion years ago. Water, what you're doing is you're pumping down water, as you can see on the right-hand side in the diagram, you're pumping down water into a hot rock where it is heated, and steam is then used to heat buildings directly, or you are generating electricity by spinning a turbine. So that is another way in which you are getting renewable energy. Then the other is hydroelectric power. Now this has been going on for a very long time. Hydroelectric power we have been using for a very, very long time. So how we do that? Water flows downwards with gravity to spin a turbine, and this is definitely more reliable than solar and wind power because what you're doing is man-made and you are kind of controlling it. But obviously the problem is that this is a very expensive proposition and it also harms wildlife. It causes a lot of displacement of human life as well as different kinds of animals as well as plant getting destructed. So that is definitely a weak point of hydroelectric power. But 22% of electricity right now in our country is generated from this hydroelectric power. Then coming into biomass. So we'll be talking a little bit about this biomass derived feedstocks into fuel, and you will understand where catalysis plays a role in this. So in biomass, this renewable energy sources is coming from biological things such as plants, you have animals, you have microorganisms, and you also have municipal wastes. So if you look into biomass, what it is made of lignin, you have cellulose microfibrils, you have hemicellulose, you have cellulose bundles. So this is basically the different ratio in which these are present. They actually change the kind of precursor you're using. But using these precursors, you can have energy coming in. And how we can do that, that is what we are going to discuss in the next few slides. So the type of bioenergy which you can get from these kind of biomass is you can get biofuels. So they can be, liquids like methanol, ethanol, butanol, or biodiesel. You can get gases like methane and hydrogen. Apart from that, you can heat up this directly and you will get, heat which is coming from these biomass. You can also have electricity coming in from the biomass. And what you can do is you can have it as combustion. You are heating this biomass in a boiler, and then whatever steam is generated, you're putting into the turbine, and with that you are actually generating electricity. So that is how bioelectricity can come in, which is the plain age-old method of doing it. And the other more sophisticated method is having the microbial fuel cells. So what you are doing, you have various kind of conversion processes for it. You can have a biological conversion. So what is that? It is fermentation. So with that fermentation of this biomass, what you can generate is methanol, ethanol, butanol. You can have anaerobic digestion, which can give rise to methane. You can have anaerobic respiration kind of processes, which is again a process which is biobatteries. Then you can have chemical conversion of this biomass. So trans-esterification process will be there, and what you will end up with is biodiesel, which can be used as transportation fuel. Then you can have various thermal conversion, like you can have combustion, you can have gasification, you can have pyrolysis. So these are various conversion processes. So if you look into this particular slide, this actually gives you how from different biomass you can get to bioenergy routes. So if you look right at the beginning, it is the photosynthesis process, which is going into your biomass. Then this biomass, what you're getting, you have various conversion processes, and you're generating different kinds of biofuels and bioenergy. And you have varied applications for it. You can use it for transport, you can use it for electric devices, you can use it for heating. And the different kinds of biomass which you use, it can be wet biomass like organic waste or manure. You can have solid biomass like wood and straw. You can have sugar and starch plants, which is like sugarcane and cereals, from which you can get all these, the waste which is left after you have extracted the sugarcane juice, or else from the starchy plants when you have taken in their fruits and whatever is left behind the stalk. So that you can use. You can use oil crops, you can use algae. Oil crops means you have taken out the oil from all the seeds and whatever is left behind. So you can use that also as a biomass, because that is actually waste. So what are the processes which are there? So using anaerobic fermentation from wet biomass, you can get biogas, you can get hydrogen, you can get methane. And this can be having a lot of applications like in electricity or in heat generation. For solid biomass, you can do gasification, combustion, pyrolysis, hydrolysis, and with that you can generate fuel gas, pyrolytic oil, and you can have heat and electricity generated. Then with sugar and starch plants, you can do hydrolysis and extraction. So you get sugar and then you can ferment it, and ultimately you will end up with ethanol and butanol. These are all liquid biofuels which can be used for transport. And then crushing and refining of oil crops and algae materials, you can get pure oil, and you do the transesterification of that, and you will get methyl ester, which is nothing but a biodiesel. This is a liquid biofuel, and you can have a lot of, you can use it for transportation. So this is the entire, this particular slide gives you an entire idea of how to move from biomass to bioenergy with the various routes of of their conversion. So what is the advantage of biomass? As I've already told you, this is basically, there is widespread availability in many parts of the world. So, and generally the fuel cost is low compared with that of fuel for fossil fuels. Biomass as a resource, it can be stored in large amounts, and bioenergy produced, it can be produced on demand. Like that is again a very important thing. You need not store it. You can store that biomass only as a resource. You don't need, another energy storing device to it. You can store the biomass as such, and then bioenergy can be produced on demand. Obviously, job creation. Then you have developing technologies, and knowledge base offers opportunities for technology exports. And of course, carbon dioxide mitigation and other emission reductions, like all sulfur oxides, different kinds of sulfur oxides, nitrogen oxides, and stuff like that. So this is the advantage of using biomass. Let's look into the environmental benefits. On the right left hand side, that blue, it shows you how much of basically you are polluting the atmosphere when you are generating gasoline or petroleum from fossil fuels. And on the right hand side, if you see from biomass, if you are using cellulosic ethanol, then you are almost causing 86% reduction of this kind of carbon dioxide emission, total emission in the process for that. So this is the environmental benefits when we are using biomass. But everything is not as good. There are certain drawbacks also. Well, one of the primary drawbacks is obviously you have very low energy content compared with all the other renewable energy sources which you have seen. And then there is competition for the resource with food, feed, and material applications like particle board or paper. Biomass is used for various kind of things. And third point is generally the very higher investment cost for conversion into final energy in comparison with fossil alternatives. So what happens is initially when you have to develop a biomass based refinery, the cost which you have is going to be a little more compared with that of the fossil fuel alternatives. But once you have kind of established the biorefinery, then of course it is definitely much more advantageous. So these are the drawbacks. So if you look into the biofuel applications, the liquids, ethanol and butanol, they can be used in gasoline engines, either at low blends up to 10%. In high blends, you can use it in flexible fuel vehicles or in pure form in adapted engines. So otherwise, you can use it in the blend form if you're not adapting your engine to the bio-based fuels. And biodiesel, it can be used both blended with the fossil diesel and in pure form. And its acceptance by the car manufacturers is definitely growing now. But why butanol? Why not ethanol? Because this is more similar to gasoline, which is used, than ethanol. So butanol, it can be transported by existing pipelines. Ethanol cannot be transported via the existing pipelines. It has different properties. And fuel engines designed for use with gasoline without modification, you can use that. Butanol can be used in the fuel engines, which has been designed for gasoline without any modification, but ethanol cannot be used. And it can be produced from biomass, biobutanol, as well as petroleum, which is petrobutanol. Toxicity issues, it is no worse than that of gasoline. That's why butanol is preferred when you are preparing it from the biomass. Then how do you get biodiesel from triglyceride oil? I was talking about biodiesel.
Ma'am,
Yes.
excuse me, ma'am. Yeah, I have two questions from the two previous slides.
Yes.
When we're talking about the ethanol as a fuel and all, the way that engines work is that they atomize the fuel droplets and then have it combust internally, right?
Right.
So ethanol would also have a lot of moisture content. So that wouldn't that quickly oxidize the inside of the combustion engine chambers?
Yes, definitely. So that is why you need to have special engines if you are actually using full ethanol. So that is the reason why you have to have adapted fuel engines for that.
Okay.
And whereas when you are taking butanol as such, then in that case, what is happening is it is more akin to, more similar in structure to that of gasoline, whatever you're using. So that effect is much less.
My second question. That was my second question. That is a reason that butanol is better than ethanol just because of its similarity to gasoline, or the fact that it would have a different mechanism of the hydrogen bonds in it?
No, that mechanism is also a little bit different. And first and foremost, the structure is more or less similar. So that is why you can use the normal engines for this. And here you can use only a blend. You can go maximum up to 10%. Beyond that, you are not going as of now.
And
Because
is
again,
there
of that ethanol is having, it forms an isotropic mixture and that moisture content is there. So all those problems are there.
yeah, and is there like a social issue behind the use of discontinuing use of ethanol as well? Like ethanol can be used to also make alcohol, but butanol cannot be. Is that a factor or not?
You're absolutely right on this, because as I told you that it is going to kind of compete with many other applications which ethanol has.
Okay.
So it's going to compete with that also. So it's a very, very valid question.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you. No, not at the moment.
Okay, okay. So now we'll come to biodiesel formation from triglyceride oils. So triglyceride, it consists of glycerol backbone and it has 3 fatty acid tails, as you can see. So what happens now when you are generating this biodiesel from triglycerides, you have to use a few catalysts. So generally you are using sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide. And this OH minus from this catalyst, it is facilitating the breakage of the bonds between the fatty acid and the glycerol. And the methanol is then going to bind to the free end of the fatty acid and it will produce the methyl ester, as you can see over there. And this is basically nothing but the biodiesel. And this is a multi-step reaction mechanism, as you can see, from the triglyceride, you're going to triglyceride, then monoglyceride, then methyl esters and glycerin. This is what you are getting as a result. So that methyl ester, what I've shown over there, this is basically the biodiesel. And this can be used And this is being used directly in many of the engines. So then we have various other biofuel applications like gases which are coming in. So hydrogen, as you can be used in fuel cells for generating electricity. Methane can be combusted directly or converted to ethanol. So all these different applications are there when you are generating different kinds of these products from biomass. Bioheat is, again, if you know, small scale heating system using households. Typically they are using firewoods or these different pellets. Then medium scale users are typically burned wood chips in the grade boilers, which is shown on the right hand side. Or else you can have large scale boilers which are burning a large variety of fuels, including wood based and refuse derived fuels. So this is bioheat applications. Bioheat applications become very important for countries which are in the colder climates, because that is the way normal people are generally, heating up their homes. Then bioelectricity applications, combustion followed by a water vapor cycle driven turbine engine is the main technology at present. This is cogeneration. What you are doing, you are, as I told you, you are heating up that entire biomass what you have, so combusting it, and then obviously you are having steam generated because of that water vapor cycle, and then you are driving a turbine, and that turbine engine is generating electricity. So this is the normal method for bioelectricity applications. The second, more technologically advanced, is the microbial fuel cell, which is direct conversion of the biomass to electricity. So what you have over here is basically this kind of a microbial fuel cell. On the left hand side, what you see is your the anode material, and on the right hand side, what you have is the cathode. So electrons are flowing from the anode to the cathode through a resistor, as you can see over here, where electron acceptors are reduced, and the protons flow across the proton exchange membrane, what you have over here, to complete the circuit inside. So this is how basically a microbial fuel cell works. So you can see over here, you are having this glucose molecule, you are having this NADH, and from there this bacteria is there, and then basically you are generating this proton, and this particular proton is actually moving over here through this proton exchange membrane. And so this is how the proton exchange membrane is present over here, and this is allowing the movement of the ions here, and the electrons are moving in the outer circuit. So this is a microbial fuel cell. So in the microbial fuel cells in the lab, they look somewhat like this, as is shown over here. So it is a 2-compartment microbial fuel cell. Proton exchange membranes are generally Nafion or Ultrex is used. The electrodes are graphite plates. The working volume is around 400 ml. So these are microbial fuel cells in the lab. Larger versions of it, or pilot scale versions of it, are available. But as of now, my MFC being used totally for bioelectricity generations in the commercial scale, it is definitely as of yet not there. So now what we would like to talk about, as I said, that this is about catalyst material. So we'll talk about how catalytic conversion of biomass derived feedstocks into renewable fuel and chemicals happen. So the idea behind it is designing more active, selective, and stable catalysts, and elucidating a more detailed understanding of the catalytic chemistries underlying these processes. So I'm sure all of you remember what catalysis is, so I need not go into details of it. So what you actually have, you have the reactants and the products on this side. So if you are having an uncatalyzed reaction, this is going to be how it is going to look. And when you are catalyzing the reaction, this is how the plot is going to look. So basically what you're doing is you're providing an alternate pathway. It is not changing the energy of the reactants of the products, but what is changing is the pathway by which this reaction is going to happen. So the 3 key aspects of catalytic action are: it will take part in the reaction, it will change itself during the process by interacting with other reactant product molecules, it will alter the rate of reaction. So in most cases, the rate of reactions are increased by the action of catalyst. However, in some situations, it will kind of, bring down the rate of the undesired reaction, which is selectively suppressed. That is why you are using that catalyst. And then it will return to its original form. So after reaction cycles, a catalyst with exactly the same nature is kind of reborn. So in practice, a catalyst has its lifespan. Please remember, it looks like it should go on and on, but then gradually it deactivates during use. So catalysis action, if we talk about it, is the reaction kinetics and the mechanism. It leads to a change in the rate of reaction, and this is realized by changing the course of reaction compared to the non-catalytic reaction, which was basically that graph which I showed you. So it will form a complex with reactants and products, and it will control the rate of the elementary steps in the process. And what we see is that the reaction activity and activation energy is altered. We'll see that the intermediate forms are different. The intermediates which are formed with catalyst, they are different from those which are formed in the non-catalytic reaction. And the rates of reaction are altered, both the desired as well as the undesired ones. So reaction will proceed under less demanding condition. So you allow the reaction to occur under milder conditions, example at lower temperature for those heat sensitive materials, or you can have, faster reactions happening. So all those, or you can cut down, on many stages because you're using the catalysis. So these are the kind of materials which we will be looking at. So always remember that the catalyst will not, vary the delta G or K equivalent values of the reaction. It just changes the pace of the process. So whether a reaction can proceed or not, or to what extent a reaction can proceed, is solely determined by the reaction thermodynamics, which is governed by the values of this delta G and K equivalent. And it is not by the presence of catalyst. Whereas what is happening is that when you are talking about catalyst, it's kind of changing the kinetics of the reaction. So let's look into this particular reaction. When you're reacting methane with carbon dioxide, ideally speaking, you should get carbon monoxide and hydrogen. Now look into the delta G of this particular reaction, just positive. And it becomes negative when you're increasing the temperature of the reaction. So at 100 degrees centigrade, the delta G value is positive. So there is no thermodynamic driving force. As you know, delta G has to be negative for a reaction to be spontaneous. So in this particular case, there is no thermodynamic driving force. But at 700 degrees centigrade, the delta G is now negative. So definitely there is a thermodynamic driving force. But if you simply put methane and carbon dioxide together in a reactor, it doesn't mean that it's going to react. So without a proper catalyst, heating the mixture in reactor results in no conversion of the methane and the carbon dioxide at all. So when you're having this particular catalyst coming in, like platinum on zirconia or nickel on alumina is present in the reactor at the same temperature, then this conversion can be achieved. Okay, so you'll get this conversion. So that is why please remember that it's not that you add a catalyst and reaction is going to happen. If it's thermodynamically not feasible, then adding a catalyst is not going to do anything. So now there are 5 broad classes of catalysis research, if you can think about. So one is biocatalysts, like there is enzymes. So this is the water oxidation in photosynthesis. So the proton and electron transfers, it is ambient temperature, ambient pressure, it's in the liquid state, it's aqueous. So that is one particular class of catalysis research which goes on, which is based on enzymes, and these are all biocatalysts. Then you have homogeneous catalysts. So these are basically transition metal complexes. So generation of fine chemicals, synthesis of olefin, using metathesis reactions. For this, you need these kind of homogeneous catalysis. And then you have another class which we'll be discussing a little bit in detail, which is the electrocatalysts. For example, like platinum nanoparticles. So these are generally used in fuel cells, and it is also used for water electrolysis. And then you have the conventional heterogeneous catalysis, like rhodium nanoparticles. These are used in various catalytic converters, in ammonia synthesis. So these are the conventional heterogeneous catalysis materials. Research goes on in that particular field also. And then you have some very ultra high vacuum surface science where ruthenium is definitely used. And these are mostly you'll find for adsorption, desorption reactions, then fundamental studies. So that is another class of catalysis research. So among this, we will be concerning ourselves mostly with electrocatalyst and conventional heterogeneous catalysis. So what is the catalyst composition? It is just the material, it is not that. We generally have an active phase where basically the reaction will occur. It is mostly the metal or the metal oxide. Then you have something which is known as a promoter. You have a textual promoter. You can have an electric or a structural modifier. You can have a poison resistant promoter. So that is also there in the catalyst. And then you have a support or a carrier. Why? Because that will increase the mechanical strength of the catalyst. It will increase the surface area. Because if you are having a support or a carrier which is highly porous, on which the active material is dispersed, in that case it will have more and more surface area to react, and obviously it is going to increase the efficiency of your catalytic process. And the support or the carrier which you use, it can be catalytically active or it can be catalytically inactive also. So both types are generally used when you are talking about solid catalysts. So what are some common solid support or carrier material? You can have alumina, which is quite inexpensive. You'll always see silica, which is also inexpensive. And then you have zeolites, which is a mixture of this alumina and silica. And they are shape selective and they are acidic in nature. So all these three you see are acidic in nature. So these carrier materials. Then how do you prepare it? So you can have precipitation reaction. Then you have some adsorption and ion exchange which is going on. Then you have impregnation of this particular catalyst on the support. And then you have dry mixing. You can physically mix it, grind it, and then you can fire it. And ultimately you will get this kind of solid catalysts. Okay. So what is the typical catalyst lifespan? So it can have many years or it can even be for a few minutes. It depends on the use of the catalyst. Okay, so it's not that it has to have many years only, then it is important, but you can have catalyst for different kind of lifespan. It can be for many years or also it can be for few minutes. And why is catalyst is considered to be green chemistry? Because using catalyst reduces the use of energy. The use of stoichiometric reagents is definitely, catalyst sometimes help in reducing that. It also reduces byproducts because sometimes when the catalyst is particularly selective, then it will reduce the formation of byproducts, and obviously the selectivity of your reaction increases. It also reduces waste. So recalling the principles of green chemistry, it is better to prevent waste than to treat or clean up waste after it is formed. So that is why it is definitely green chemistry. Energy requirements should also be minimized. Synthetic methods should be conducted at ambient temperature and pressure. So if suppose a material without a catalyst, you are finding that reaction proceeding at 700 degrees centigrade, and by addition of a catalyst, it is coming down to 500 degrees centigrade. Definitely you are kind of pushing it towards a more greener chemistry. And catalytic reagents, they are superior to using stoichiometric ones. But what are the potential disadvantages? That also you have to think whenever you're designing a catalyst, that how easy it is to separate the catalyst residue from the product. Now you use a catalyst and then it is kind of contaminating your product and you are not having a good method to separate it out. Then it is definitely not a good catalyst material. Then how much you're able to recycle that catalyst. As I said, we always say that catalyst doesn't take, it remains unchanged, but sometimes it so happens that after 2 cycles, 4 cycles, 5 cycles, or maybe 500 cycles, you are not able to use that catalyst again. So the more you are able to use it, recycle the catalyst, it is definitely going to be a better one. Degradation of the catalyst, if it is degrading, the catalyst itself is degrading, then definitely it is not a good catalyst. And toxicity, I mean, you cannot use a catalyst for a process where the catalyst itself is, it's increasing the toxicity. So that is because you will have catalyst residue and catalyst degradation products which might not be good for getting the final product. However, please remember it is greener to use catalysts than not to use them. But you have to keep in mind all these points. So now let's look into a few syntheses. Like you have this boot synthesis of ibuprofen. If you see this entire process over here, you just look from where we are starting and how we are actually synthesizing ibuprofen. This is the normal method by which ibuprofen was synthesized, and this is a very important painkiller. But then we have this whole synthesis of ibuprofen. You look what happened over here. Look into the number of steps which we had in the initial stage. And now when we use this particular synthesis, what we are having is less number of stages. All these 3 steps are catalytic, as you can see. So you are having different kinds of catalysts used in all the 3 stages. In the second stage, you are using hydrogen nickel. In the third stage, you are using carbon monoxide and palladium. So what you are having is almost 99% conversion, 96% selectivity, and so much of less waste which is generated, whereas compared to the previous case in the boot synthesis ibuprofen. So definitely by using the catalyst, you are lessening the number of steps, and also you are having higher conversion efficiency, and you're also having higher selectivity. So now coming to some definitions, we were talking about homogeneous catalysis, we talked about heterogeneous catalysis, if you remember in the 5 different classes of catalysis when I showed. So the homogeneous catalysis, as the name suggests, the reagents and the catalysts, they are all in the same phase. So typically all of them are in solutions. Whereas when you talk about heterogeneous catalysis, it is mostly surface catalysis. So reagents, they are in a different phase from the catalyst. Usually the reagents are gases or liquids and they are passed over a solid catalyst. For example, catalytic converters which you have in the car exhaust. Biocatalysis, as I've already said, they are mostly enzymes. So these are the catalysis. So if you now look into heterogeneous versus homogeneous catalysis, wherever there is a green tick, when we talk about it, that means it is an advantage. When we have a cross, that means it is a disadvantage. I'm not going to read out everything. But you can see the few of the green ticks which is there in heterogeneous catalysis. It is readily separated, it is readily recycled or regenerated, it is long lived, and it is cheap. But that doesn't mean that we only use heterogeneous catalysts. We also use homogeneous catalysts. Where we use it? Where sometimes when you're using homogeneous catalysis, you get very high rate of the reaction. It is also very robust to poisons. It doesn't get poisoned easily. It's also homogeneous catalysis are highly selective. If you remember in that slide where I showed 5 different classes, I had mentioned it's highly selective. Mild conditions and mechanisms are often known when you are doing homogeneous catalysis. For heterogeneous catalysis, establishing the reaction mechanism sometimes become a little bit tricky. So ultimate goal is what? To combine the fast rates and high selectivities of homogeneous catalysts with the ease of recovery and recycle of the heterogeneous catalysis. So this is where everybody is working into. So there are 7 stages of surface catalysis when we talk about heterogeneous catalysis. So first is diffusion of the catalyst towards the surface. Then you have physisorption. So what is happening is basically it is sitting on the surface, physical absorption via weak interactions like van der Waals. It will adhere the substrate to the surface. Then you have chemisorption. So you have the formation of chemical bonds between the surface and the substrate. Then you have migration of the bound substrate to the active catalytic site, which is known as surface diffusion. Then the reaction happens. Followed by that, you have desorption of the products from the surface, and then it diffuses away from the surface. So this is how the heterogeneous catalysis it works. So the same thing is shown over here pictorially. You can later on you can go through the slides. Then we have, if you look into it, the heterogeneous acid-base catalysis, what we have is almost approximately 130 industrial processes they are using this solid acid-base catalyst. And they are mainly found in bulk petrochemical production, example in dehydration reactions and condensation reactions, alkylation, esterification, all of this you have different kinds of this solid acid-base catalyst being used. And all these reactions, as I told you, they are mostly acid catalyzed processes. And look at the number of catalysts being employed. Almost 180 different catalysts are employed for all these different processes in these different industrial processes. Out of this, almost 74 are zeolites, where ZSM5 is one of the largest group of zeolites which is used. And the second large group are the oxides of aluminium, silicon, titanium, and zirconium. So these are basically the most common acid-base catalysts which you have. So we had discussed about zeolites, if you remember. Zeolites are nothing but these are kind of crystalline inorganic polymer which is having silica as well as aluminium tetrahedra. So you have, these are derived from silicon hydroxide and aluminium hydroxide. And the metal ion, whatever you see outside like the sodium ion or a potassium ion, is basically to balance the negative charge of this entire aluminosilicate structure. And the lattice, if you see, it consists of interconnected cage-like structures featuring a mixture of pore sizes, which depends upon the aluminium-silicon ratio and the counter-cation employed and also the level of hydration, the synthetic conditions, etc. So basically, this hydrated nature of the zeolites, it makes them behave as, bronze-state acids. Okay. So this is how the ZSM5 or the mostly used zeolite looks like. So this is the top view on the left-hand side. The side view looks like this. So you have channels which cross in 3 dimensions. So it's a highly porous material. And as you can see, these channels, the porosity inside it is of different dimensions. And you can actually kind of tailor these dimensions by controlling the silicon to aluminium ratio. And with that, you can use it as an adsorbent material or a catalyst material for different kinds of reactions. So let's look into a few reactions where these zeolites are being used as a catalyst. So if you look into the cyclohexanol synthesis process, you have this particular precursor being used, and you are kind of doing a hydrogenation reaction in the presence of nickel, and then you are again processing the product which is formed with oxygen and with cobalt, and you get a mixture of this. You get a mixture of this ketone and you get a mixture of this cyclohexanol. So this is what you get. So this was when you are doing a traditional synthesis where you were actually using catalysts. You were using nickel as a catalyst, you are using cobalt as a catalyst. So catalyst was being used. But you just look into the temperature over it is 225 degrees centigrade at around 10 atmosphere pressure. This particular cyclohexanol synthesis worked. But when you are using zeolites to synthesize the same process, what is happening? You see, the first process goes like the same similar manner. You're doing hydrogenation in the presence of nickel. So you're getting this particular product. But after this, if you are using zeolite as a catalyst, then this particular reaction proceeds at only 100 degrees centigrade, and you are getting cyclohexanol with almost 98% selectivity. Okay, so this is how zeolites are being used. Then also, zeolites are also used for some shape selective synthesis, So if you are having this kind of, xylene formation you have, so from this precursor, if you are preparing xylene, so what you will have is, if you are using a zeolite like HZSM5, this is the acidic ZSM5, then what you will get is only paraxylene. You will not get the ortho or the metaxylene, only paraxylene will come. So why this synthesis is very important? Because paraxylene is required for the synthesis of polyethylene terephthalate, commonly known as PET. So this is one of the very important chemicals. So by using this kind of zeolite as a catalyst, using the normal methods where you will get actually a combination of all orthometa and paraxylene, using the zeolite, what you will get is only paraxylene, and this is very important for you to get PET chemicals. So this is the importance. Then you can have this rare example of solid base catalysis. So you have the traditional synthesis of ENB, which is 5-ethylidene 2-norbornene. So this is via this vinyl norborane. And why this ENB is a very important material, because this is a key component to produce this kind of EPDM rubber. So the base used for the isomerization is typically the sodium and potassium alloy in liquid ammonia. And because this ammonia is easily recycled, the metal recycle is difficult, and this process is definitely not wanted, because sodium potassium is very dangerous to use, because it is much more reactive than either sodium or potassium. Whereas if you do this via the Sumimoto process, you are using a base as a heterogeneous catalyst, which is composed of sodium and sodium hydroxide on alumina. And in this case, what you have is a very high activity, and the isomerization, it proceeds at room temperature, and the catalyst is also readily recycled. So this is a rare example of a solid base catalysis. So similarly, when we talk about biomass also, this biomass conversion, we can actually do it more efficient manner when we have a catalytic biomass conversion. So there are various challenges, when we are talking about biomass feedstock, that we first have to understand, because biomass is a very complex and diverse feedstock. So it is composed of a variety of oxygenated polymers, minerals, different extractives. And lignocellulosic biomass is a solid non-volatile material which contains up to 50% oxygen. So before you actually do the transformation, it is better for you to remove this oxygen, so that you get higher value products or fuels that are compatible with the current infrastructure. And furthermore, minerals in the biomass, they are also present, they can be present up to 28%. And what is the problem? Because if these minerals are present, they can also act as a poison. So what is going to happen? It is much better to remove them during biomass upgrading. Okay. So components which are present in this biomass, it can catalyze homogeneous side reactions, altering yields and selectivity as compared to the reaction of isolated, well-defined model compounds. So we might say that fine, we have this particular catalyst, it works very well on this particular precursor. But since your biomass is made of different kinds of materials, so it's very important for you to understand that how you need to purify this biomass, so that you get the right kind of precursor with which the catalyst is going to react. So that is why the choice of the catalyst, it plays a very big role over here. Then the components present in the biomass can inhibit direct desired reactions by strongly binding to the active site. So that is also another problem. So minerals in the biomass, as I said, it can poison the zeolite catalyst. And also organic acids in pyrolysis oil can inhibit the hydrogenation ability of the common catalyst. So that is why having the right kind of catalyst for biomass conversion is a matter of great research. So realistic biomass feedstock also contains species that are present as structural or stereoisomers. So like Glucose, if you dissolve in water, they are present in 5 different equilibrated isomers or tautomers whose speciation depends on factors such as solvent composition, reaction temperature. So this is going to affect the reactivity. So fructose, for example, is more readily dehydrated to 5 hydroxymethylfurfural than the pyranose form, which is glucose. And as such, the conditions under which fructose is predominantly in the pyranose form leads to a higher HMF selectivity. So the presence of a Lewis acid catalyst, which is going to facilitate the interconversion between these two isomers, it is going to improve the yield of this HMF from glucose. So that is why you have to understand the processes also very well, because some species which are going to be present in the form of stereoisomers, they might also again play an anti-role over here. So if you look into the possible scheme for a chemocatalytic biorefinery, so you have this lignocellulose. This is the composition of the biomass. So from it, if you take out the lignin can be chemically converted into phenols, aromatics, dibasic acids, and olefins. Whereas if you do a catalytic hydrolysis and depolymerization, you will end up from this lignocellulose, what you will get is cellulose and hemicellulose. And this cellulose or hemicellulose, you can catalytic conversion you can do, and you can get biofuels. And also what you can do is you can have these various reactions. You can do dehydration and you can get furfurals, which is biofuel and chemicals. You can do fermentation, you can get alcohols like biofuels and chemicals again. And also you can do aqueous phase reforming, you will get hydrocarbon and biohydrogen, which is again biofuels and chemicals. So this is the possible scheme for a chemocatalytic biorefinery. So if you look into it, this is what we actually have, which is kind of giving rise to a lot of greenhouse effect. Whereas what we want to move into is particularly this. So this is the picture, and ultimately what we want is this gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel, as well as the chemicals, which can come from all this biomass, which is right now coming, the majority of which is coming from all this fossil fuel. So this is what we are aiming to achieve, and the researchers are aiming to achieve. So which are the common reactions involved in biomass processing? This is dehydration, then you have hydrogenation and hydrodeoxidation. So if we are converting all these C5 oligomers which are present in the biomass to furfural, so then you see you can use it, you are using this hydrogenation reaction, hydrolysis reaction, followed by dehydration, and ultimately from C5 oligomers you are producing xylose, from which you are moving to furfural. So you have all these different kinds of catalysts which can be used for this particular process. Okay, so you have all these different catalysts which are shown over here. You can use this catalyst for this conversion process of this biomass. Then another very important reaction is the carbon-carbon coupling. Ketonization processes involve condensation of two carboxylic acid molecules, and they produce a larger symmetric ketone. And this reaction possesses great potential for the catalytic upgrading of biomass, since carbon-carbon coupling takes place with simultaneous oxygen removal. As I told you, you need to remove oxygen so that you get a cleaner precursor material. So oxygen removal happens from the carboxylic acid, the latter of which are common intermediates in biomass conversion processes. So this reaction can be typically catalyzed by inorganic oxides like ceria, titania, alumina, zirconia at moderate temperatures, which is between 573 to 698 Kelvin. So you have this CC coupling reaction catalyst also being used when you are converting biomass to different fuels. So this, as you can see, the different types of fuels, biofuels, alcohol-derived fuels, pyrolytical oils. So you are using it in the liquid form. You can use it in IC engine, and the applications are in heavy-duty vehicles and shipping in industrial applications. Biomass from non-recyclable waste, you can have this solid. You can use it directly in the gas steam turbine, steam generators, gas turbines, industrial application. Hydrogen, ammonia, syngas, biogas, these are all gaseous. You can use in fuel cells, and you can use it for transport as well as in power plants. So these are form and technology utilization perspectives for alternative fuels. Now let's look into these different fuels, whatever we are having: wood, coal, oil, natural gas, hydrogen. You see the increase in the H2 carbon ratio. So if you look into this, then you find that hydrogen is definitely the fuel which we actually want. So ultimately, hydrogen is considered to be the ultimate fuel, which is a clean and sustainable fuel. It has the very high calorific value. And what you want to do, ideally, a power package for the future would be, what you want to do is you take in water, you use an electrolyzer, and with the electrolyzer, you are actually taking out hydrogen. You have a hydrogen storage, proper hydrogen storage facility. This hydrogen you are putting into the fuel cell, And with the fuel cell, you're adding in the oxygen. And if you're adding in oxygen, what is your byproduct is only water. And what you are generating is nothing but electrical power. So this is the ideal scenario which we want to move in. But for this, a lot of research needs to be done. And for this right now, what we need is an electrocatalyst. So before defining electrocatalyst, let us define what is electrocatalysis. This is defined as the relative ability of different substances when used as electrode surfaces under the same conditions, and it accelerates a given electrochemical process. Okay, so it accelerates an electrochemical process. So electrocatalysts are a specific form of catalyst that function at electrode surfaces or maybe the electrode surface itself. It can be heterogeneous, such as a platinum surface, or nanoparticles, or homogeneous, like a coordination complex or enzyme. So the electrocatalyst assists in what? It transfers the electrons between the electrode and the reactants and facilitates an intermediate chemical transformation, which is described by an overall half reaction. So that much is for the definition, but what it actually means, it will become more clear through this slide. So generally the overall reaction for water electrolysis is by two half cell reactions. One is HER, which is the hydrogen evolution reaction. The other is OER, which is the oxygen evolution reaction. So what you have over here is the hydrogen evolution reaction shown over here. And you can see the voltage over here is around 0 volt. And whereas if you have the oxygen evolution reaction where you are generating oxygen from the water, in that case, this particular potential is 1.23 volts. Okay, so what is going to be the actual reaction between this, the actual voltage difference or the potential? This is E cathode minus E anode, which is around minus 1.3 volts. And delta G of this particular reaction is 237 kilojoules per mole. So we can see where the Achilles heels lies for this water electrolysis. This particular process is non-spontaneous. So the delta G is positive over here. So you have to understand that in this particular case, some energy has to be given to it to actually undergo this particular water electrolysis process. And what is the critical barrier that keeps water from splitting? Is the very sluggish reaction kinetics of this oxygen evolution reaction and the hydrogen evolution reaction due to very high over potentials, which is a measure of the kinetic energy barriers. So therefore, catalysis plays a very major role in both this oxygen evolution reaction as well as the hydrogen evolution reaction. So now when we have an electrocatalyst, how we will evaluate the performance? So you need a performance evaluation index, okay, for these electrocatalysts. So electrolytic water splitting, as I showed over there, it is having a positive value of delta G, but that is not the only problem. The other problem is it also has a significant kinetic barrier. So catalyst will play a very important role in lowering that kinetic barrier. As you can see over here, if you have an uncatalyzed reaction, anyway, we have this uphill reaction happening, delta G is greater than 0, and along with it, the uncatalyzed reaction, you look into the activation energy, it is very, very high. So you need, what you need is a catalyst, so to bring down this particular overpotential. So water electrolysis, please understand, it requires a higher potential than the thermodynamic potential to overcome the kinetic barrier. And this excess potential is known as overpotential. And this comes because of these intrinsic activation barriers present on both on the anode and the cathode. And the typical overpotential value, whatever is shown in most of the research papers, it corresponds to a current density of 10 milliampere per centimeter square, which is used to compare the activity of various catalysts. So ideally, if you look into right-hand side, what you have, this is the red region, which is basically your, this is the potential range in which this entire water electrolysis should happen. But ultimately, using your catalyst, this is how the overpotential looks, the black and the blue line, as you can see. And that is where you are having these different overpotential, and this is the excess potential which needs to be applied for your reaction to actually take place. So how do I know my catalyst is better? So for that, to access the activity from we assess the activity from the overpotential versus kinetic current relationship. So you have this particular relationship over here where eta is the overpotential and J is the current density. And you have these two values, A and B. Now the Staffel slope is something which we use, and Staffel slope B is related to the catalytic reaction mechanism in terms of electron transfer kinetics. If you have a smaller V value, that means there is a significant current density increment as a function of the overpotential change, or in other words, what you're having is faster electrocatalytic reaction kinetics. So that means this J or this J value is the exchange current density, and it describes the intrinsic charge transfer under equilibrium conditions. So if you have a higher J value, it means a greater charge transfer rate and a lower reaction barrier. So please understand from this particular equation, what you understand is that a lower Tafel slope, lower B value, and a higher exchange current density will lead to a better electrocatalyst. So if we again look into the various performance evaluation index, the longer the tested current or potential remains constant, then it ensures the better stability of the catalyst. So we look into various kinds of efficiency parameters. One is the Faradaic efficiency, or Fe, which is basically amount of the oxygen or hydrogen which is generated experimentally, and this is and the ratio of it to the theoretically generated oxygen or hydrogen. We have something which is known as the turnover frequency. You have the formula given over here. So turnover frequency describes how many reactants can be converted to the desired product per catalytic site per unit time. So the experimental values are measured by analyzing all these experimental values for all this performance evaluation index. This is measured by analyzing the gas production using the water gas displacement method or the gas chromatography method. So these are the various ways in which you will find out how your electrocatalyst is performing. So what are the reaction steps in the hydrogen evolution reaction? In an acidic medium, as you can see on the left hand side, these are the process. So proton with electron giving you hydrogen adsorbed, and then again it is second time it is reacting with it is giving you hydrogen. 2 of this hydrogen adsorbed is ultimately going to give you hydrogen. In the alkaline medium, it is the other way around. You have this OH minus with the hydrogen adsorbed, and then 2 of this is again going to give you hydrogen. So these are the reaction steps in hydrogen evolution reaction. Now, which are the good catalysts for hydrogen evolution reaction? So we have plotted this, MH bond energy for each of these different metals to be used as the catalyst. And along with it, we have plotted the exchange current density. Now, if you remember, I had told you from the Tafel slope thing that in that particular equation, that exchange current density has to be as high as possible. So if you have this plot, what you find is rightmost at the top, what you're having is platinum, you're having rhodium. So immediately you will understand that this particular these materials, they are definitely going to be good catalytic materials for hydrogen evolution reaction. Similarly, if you are plotting the exchange current density on monometallic surfaces, in that case also you will find platinum somewhere sitting right at the top of the volcano plot. So definitely these are materials which are going to be good catalyst material for hydrogen evolution reaction. So we can see noble metal based electrocatalyst versus non-noble based metal based electrocatalyst. For noble metal based electrocatalyst, particularly the platinum ones, several strategies are being developed to increase this performance and lower the electrocatalytic price, because we know that if you have to use platinum as the electrocatalyst, the price is going to be very high. So what you do is alloy platinum with other low cost transition metals, which can improve the platinum utilization and the synergetic effect of the alloy. It can modify the electronic environment and it is going to improve the activity. Also, you can couple platinum with other water dissociation promoters, which is again a very important strategy to improve the alkaline hydrogen evolution reaction activities, which is very meaningful for industrial practical use. For all the non-noble metal-based electrocatalysts, a great deal of attention is being drawn to the development of low-cost and earth-abundant materials. So you have these defect-rich MOS2, cobalt sulfide, oxygenated molybdenum sulfide. So these are basically different kinds of hydrogen evolution reaction electrocatalysts which are non-noble metal-based, which are being considered. Now, what are the reaction steps in oxygen evolution reaction? In oxygen evolution reaction, please understand that this is a more difficult process compared to hydrogen evolution reaction, because over here you have a 4 electron transfer process. If you look into this adsorbed evolution mechanism for this particular process, oxygen evolution reaction, you have 4, you can see over here 4 electron process. So for this 4 electron process, if we are looking for catalysts to improve this, and this is generally done in an alkaline medium. So if you are looking into different catalysts where it is going to help with this oxygen evolution reaction, so we find over here volcano plot for all these different catalysts which has been tested, and we see ruthenium oxide is occupying right at the top of the volcano. So basically, if you look into it, this is definitely going to be one of the good catalysts for this kind of oxygen evolution reaction. Then another very important process is the carbon dioxide reduction. So that was water electrolysis. The another process where electrocatalysts find a lot of application in the recent years is to find out how you can reduce carbon dioxide. Why this is important? So you have purified carbon dioxide, you are doing carbon dioxide reduction, and you are generating a lot of fuels and chemicals by reducing carbon dioxide. You consume that, you have carbon dioxide emission, again you can put it back, you can have purified carbon dioxide. So ultimately, you are producing an anthropogenic carbon cycle by converting carbon dioxide and water into fuels and chemicals using solar or other forms of renewable energy. And this is basically a very appealing strategy to remove excess carbon dioxide. But it is better said than done, because there are a lot of problems which has to be solved before we actually look into this electrocatalytic carbon dioxide reduction. So electrochemical conversion of this carbon dioxide is being thought upon, and this has several advantages because it can have a mild reaction condition. You can have controllable reaction rates and product selectivity through the applied potential, and wide scalability due to modular electrolyzer designs. So now let's look into it, what we actually mean by it. So you see these different processes which are there to generate all these different fuels and chemicals, as we said. So carbon dioxide, it can give you carbon monoxide and water. It can generate formic acid. It can give you methanol and water. It can give you methane. It can give you various kinds of this C2H4 you can get. You can also get ethanol out of it. So all these different products are possible, and you see this all these electrochemical reduction. So everything looks very nice and fine on paper. But the biggest problem of this is the activation energy of the carbon dioxide molecule to form this radical anion, CO2 dot minus. So this radical anion forming is the biggest problem because it has a very high activation energy, and this is often the first elementary electron transfer step in a carbon dioxide reduction process. The CO2RR is carbon dioxide reduction reaction, and this proceeds at a very negative applied potential, so at a non-catalytic surface. So if you have to develop an electrocatalyst for this carbon dioxide reduction reaction, it is vital to lower the kinetic energy barrier and improve the energy efficiency of this process. So it's a very complicated multi-electron, multi-proton transfer process, and as many as 16 different products are produced with a wide range of alkanes, alkenes, aldehydes, ketones, alcohols. They can be actually formed from this carbon dioxide using a copper catalyst. So you can see all these different kinds of products which can be formed if you are able to actually do an electrocatalytic carbon dioxide reduction reaction successfully using these different catalysts. So if you look into the catalyst design strategies now for this carbon dioxide reduction reaction, so we have to see that there are three important things over here. One is the overpotential has to be controlled, selectivity because it can form various kinds of products, and the current density. So you have to understand how you are going to design. So for designing, you can actually either play with the electronic structure, and also you can play with the geometric structure. The electronic structure is going to have a direct effect on the intermediate binding energies, and the binding energy is going to play a role in the overpotential and the selectivity. Whereas if you're playing around with the geometric structure of the catalyst, then it is going to have an effect on the catalytic site density. And this again is going to affect all the three: overpotential, selectivity, and current density. Now let's look into what kind of can be manipulated for the electronic structure. So you have vacancies, alloying, you can do single atom catalysis, you can have phase junction, surface group, coating, doping. All this will change the, or it is going to tailor the electronic structure. Whereas for the geometric structure, you can have dendrites, porous structure, you can have rough surface, you can have confinement, you can have 3D substrate, you can reduce the size. So all this is going to play around with the geometric structure. But we have to understand it cannot happen in isolation. When you are changing the electronic structure, it again has an effect on the geometric structure. Why? Because you are reducing the size, you are developing a lot of grain boundaries. Again, you are having a lot of steps and terraces. When you're having rough surface and you're having phase junctions, then you're exposing specific facets or sides, you're having quantum confinement. So all these together has to be taken into consideration when you are actually designing the strategy for the designing strategy of this catalyst for carbon dioxide reduction reaction. So this is a very, very active field of research right now. So now let's see how we can generate, formic acid from this carbon dioxide reduction. So all these different reaction steps are given over here. You can read them at leisure. But what we are seeing over here, one of the primary steps is the binding energy. So it's OCHO binding energy, what we are having with the metal. Okay. So we are having this particular uh, with the formic acid, we are having this particular surface being generated, and with on this surface, basically the metal surface has to bind. So you're looking for catalysts. So how we are going to do, again the same thing, we are seeing the exchange current density versus the binding energy of these metals on this surface. And what we see is tin is sitting right at the top over here. So that means tin is going to be a very good material which can act as an electrocatalyst for the formation of this formate and formic acid from via carbon dioxide reduction. So here, if you look into this was the plot where the volcano plot for these metal surfaces, whereas over here you see these different kinds of tin-based materials which has been used. Fe, what was it? Faradaic efficiency. So you see the Faradaic efficiency of processes wherever we have tin has been used. So they are quite high. And if you look into the potential is also quite achievable. So that is why tin-based materials definitely, tin-based catalysts, they are good electrocatalysts for the formation of this formate or formic acid from carbon dioxide. Similarly, carbon monoxide also, it's also a very important material, carbon monoxide plus hydrogen if you produce, that is syngas, and syngas is the precursor material for various kinds of chemicals. There's a lot of fuels and chemicals are generated from syngas. So producing CO is also a very important part if we can get CO from CO2 using these electrocatalysts. So again over here, if you see the process, then basically you are having the metal surface and you are seeing the COH binding energy, which is again plotted versus the exchange current density. And what you see over here is that gold, definitely gold and silver. Here not tin, but gold and silver definitely is right at the top in the volcano plot. And so you will look into more and more gold-based catalysis. If you see over here, this gold-based different kinds of catalysis, which is giving large amount of Faradaic efficiency for the reduction process of this carbon dioxide to carbon monoxide using electrolysis. Okay. So what is in essence the electrocatalyst design for CO2 reduction as of now, what we have seen? So for the production of the formate or formic acid, tin, bismuth, palladium and lead-based materials can reach nearly 100% Faradaic efficiency, but it requires higher overpotentials and they have low current density. For carbon monoxide production, gold and silver-based materials remain the most active and selective catalyst. Then for the production of highly reduced C1 as C2 plus products, copper-based materials provide the best catalyst, as I showed it in the first slide in the carbon dioxide reduction reactions. So we have to, along with it, you have to also consider various design strategies, like you have to reduce the size to nanoscale level, you have to expose specific facet, you need to look into quantum confinement effect, doping, alloying, defect engineering. They have all been developed to modify the electronic and geometric structure of the catalyst so that their performance in carbon dioxide reduction can be enhanced. However, so far, no design strategy has been reported to improve the carbon dioxide reduction performance to the level required for industrial application. So that is why this is a very, very hot field of research. Now coming to the last part, which is photocatalytic water splitting. So this process, as you know, the delta G value is 238 kilojoules per mole. So what is the step? You have to absorb a photon with energy above 1.2 electron volts. So the lambda value has to be less than 1000 nanometer. This is absorbed. Then you have this photo-excited electrons and holes. They will separate and they will migrate to the surface in a photocatalyst, taking in photon. And then basically you are having a semiconductor material where basically the electrons and holes are generated. They will move up to the surface and they will react with the adsorbed species, which is the water, and they are going to reduce it. And ultimately what you are going to end up is hydrogen and oxygen. So this is photocatalytic water splitting. So instead of electrocatalyst, you are using a photocatalyst. So you are using a photon with energy above 1.23 electron volts. So photocatalyst material requirement is obviously you need a material with a band gap which is above 1.3 electron volt and sufficiently small to make efficient use of the solar spectrum. Because if you are using ultraviolet light, that is very less portion of the solar spectrum. So you try to use as much as possible the visible spectrum of solar radiation. Then you need to have a material with a very high crystallinity. Why? Because if there are defects present in the material, this electron and hole, whatever you have generated, they are going to act as recombination sites, the defects, and then so you will not be able to separate the electron and the holes to react with the adsorbed water molecule. So that is why what you need is a highly crystalline material, and of course long-term stability, because charge transfer is used for water splitting and not corrosion. So you need long-term stability of the material. So ultimately, you have these potential values for hydrogen generation and for oxygen evolution, and you have to see that the band gap of the material falls in the right level between these two, so that you can the semiconductor material band gap, that is the valence band and the conduction band, and so ultimately you will be identifying the good materials with the proper band gap lying in the proper region, so that you can use this kind of photomaterial, or you can design this kind of photocatalyst material for photocatalytic water splitting. Obviously, the other points also has to be considered, like it has to be inexpensive. It should be also earthly abundant. It should be recyclable. It should be non-toxic, resistance to corrosion, photostable, and also it should have a long lifetime. So photocatalyst requirement, as you see, so these are these different kinds of semiconductor materials which you can use, and you can see all these different band gaps which are given in, along with the position of your valence band as well as the conduction band. So there are various wide band gap semiconductors also. You can see like zirconia is one which is very wide band gap. Zinc sulfide is one which is again a wide band gap. But these are not very good ones, because obviously you are using ultraviolet region for photocatalytic reaction. And so this will result in low solar to hydrogen conversion efficiency. So we are not really considering that. We are more interested in the ones where basically the band gap value is low, so that you can use more and more of the visible light. Another very important thing to note is that when we are talking about photocatalysis materials, D0 and D10 metal oxides, they are the ones which are the most coveted ones. So what are the D0 materials? Like titanium 4+, you have titania, you have strontium titanate, you have K2La2, Ti3O10. So these kind of D0 materials. Then you have zirconium 4+, so zirconia, niobium 5+, tantalum 5+, tungsten 6+. So these are all these materials which can be, these metal oxides are going to be good photocatalysts. Then another set is the D10, like gallium 3+, zinc gallate, then indium 3+, then you can have germanium 4+, tin 4+, antimony 5+. So these are again another group of materials, the oxides of which they can be very good photocatalytic materials. So what is the reason for this? So one is the favorable band structure for redox reactions. So you know these D0 systems, they are having empty d orbitals. So they contribute to the conduction band. And the oxygen 2p orbitals, because we are using oxides, they dominate the valence band. So this conduction band is positioned at sufficiently negative potential, which is good for reduction, hydrogen reduction. And the valence band is again positioned at sufficiently positive potential, so which is again good for oxygen oxidation. So this will give you the required band gap and the redox alignment for water splitting. So that is why they are good system, D0 system. What happens when you're using a D10 system? So these have filled D shells. So these d orbitals, they are lying very deep in energy. So conduction band is formed mainly from the metal s orbitals like the zinc 4s or the cadmium 5s. Valence band is from the chalcogen p orbitals like sulfide or selenide. So what you get is a direct band gap material which has a very strong visible light absorption. There is very efficient charge transport, and there are tunable bandages which is compatible with the water redox reaction. So all these materials like zinc oxide, cadmium sulfide, copper oxide, because they are D10 system, they are again very good photocatalytic material. Then again, they are also these kind of materials, they also have very high chemical stability. Like D0 oxides like titania, zirconia, they are thermodynamically stable in water and also under ultraviolet conditions, and they are resistant to photocorrosion. So they have a very long lifetime as catalyst, which is again a very good point when you're talking about photocatalysis. D10 compounds, some of them are stable, but some like cadmium sulfide, they will need passivation. So when stabilized, when you're able to stabilize this, they will show high visible light activity. So these kind of materials which we saw in the previous slide. Then you have very high metal ligand interactions, which is again useful for photocatalysis. So these D0 systems, they will form very strong metal oxygen bonds. So they have robust frameworks and a very high valence band potential. D10, again, the metal d orbitals lie low. So valence band is formed by the ligand orbitals. So this is very good for visible light absorption and for charge transfer. So that is the reason why D0 and D10 metal oxides, they find a lot of application in as photocatalyst material. So what are the different photocatalyst development techniques? So you normally titania, which is titanium oxide, graphitic carbon nitride, cadmium sulfide. These are very widely studied catalysts for water splitting in the last few decades. And among them, titanium oxide is the most superior one, and it is still a benchmark photocatalyst. And improvement happens by all these different techniques: doping. You dope the material and you try to alter the band gap. So that is one of the very prime techniques. You can form heterojunctions. So basically, if you're forming heterojunctions, then what you're doing is you are enabling charge transfer. Why the charge transfer? Because if you're having a heterojunction, then the holes are going to be generated and they are going to stay in one place, and the electrons are going to go and sit in another place. So ultimately, what is going to happen, that recombination rate is going to decrease. So heterojunction another way. Dye sensitization. With that, you are basically sensitizing the material, and it is providing you with more amount of these electrons and holes. Then you have sensitization with a noble metal loading. Then you can increase the photocatalytic active area. So you do size reduction and you increase the photocatalytic active area, so which is going to improve the efficiency of your photocatalyst process. You can modify the surface. You can, for cadmium sulfide, like you can passivate the surface so that it becomes more stable and chemically more stable, and then you can use it as a photocatalyst. Nanostructuring, obviously, with nanostructuring you are increasing the surface area, and you can also modify it using co-catalyst. So these are the different kinds of photocatalyst development techniques which we have. So I think with this we have kind of covered your heterogeneous catalysis, the materials for heterogeneous catalysis, and if you have any questions, I can take it now. So in case there are no further questions, then I'm signing out from the class today. Have a great day.